Hi, I'm Popako with Sashin. I'm Snunamuth, and I'm married to my husband, Wawina. We are from the village of Moctasis. We're 45 minutes northwest of Tofino by boat in a village of about 900 people.
I'd like to acknowledge the Coast Salish people's lands that we're upon. I'd like to thank all the coordinators that made this event happen, and all the cooks, and all of you that are here to absorb this and witness this and participate, and who are out there in each and every one of your own ways. I'm from Ahousaht, New Channel territory. We're in the heart of Clyquet Sound. I'm gonna give you a background of who we are as a people in Ahousaht within Clyquet Sound, and a history of who we are and what we come from, just so that you see our world, just a piece of it. And I'm going to try to keep it really brief and just go through it. As Indigenous people, we were connected to land in every way, spiritually, socially, consciously. It was a part of our culture, it was a part of our teachings, it was every piece of our life. We couldn't go fishing without the berries telling us when it was time to go. The snow on the mountains told us when it was time, what we could do. The wind, the flight of birds, everything had a meaning for something else, and we took direction from all the elements around us. Every aspect of our life was dictated to by our environment, our ecosystem, of our relation to it, and acknowledging it. Even harvesting cedar, where we could do it, how we can do it, the time of year, every aspect of our hahotli, our territory around us, we had a connection to, be it the foods, be it the medicines, be it what we needed to shelter and clothe ourselves. There was an integral spiritual connection to it. They weren't just species, they had families, they had houses, they had clans, they had societies, mountains, fish, birds. They were their own beings that had their own cultures and their own societies and their own houses that we respected as human beings. And we lived this way for a great long time. Since the beginning of time, we've lived this way in harmony with our surroundings and our ecosystem. That's who we were and how we lived. With the arrival of contact and Europeans, for us on the coast, it was in the late 1700s. We had the Spaniards, Russians, British that were out in our territory. With the arrival of contact, immediately what they were about was everything was a commodity. Everything was to be exploited. That's all they saw in all the world around us, was what they could exploit, what they could profit for themselves, how they could be selfish human beings with all the natural resources in our territory. Immediately what they saw was the abundance of sea otters, and began the sea otter trade. They brought that species to near extinction. The sea otter was a key species within our ecosystem. Be it with the removal of the sea otters, it affected the kelp forest. With the kelp forest being affected, it affected the tidal currents. With the tidal currents being affected, it affected the shellfish beaches. With the shellfish beaches being affected, it affected all these other species that fed off plankton, be it whales and other species of life that were connected to this great circle. And that's how they lived. That's what happened with the attack on sea otters and the sea otter fur trade, seal fur trade. After that was the whaling stations, brought again to the brink of extinction. And we were a whaling people. It was a part of our society, who we were and our connection with the whales, and our relationship with that. We had societies and cultures based on whaling and being connected with the whales in a respectful, harmonious way. They brought that to the brink of extinction. After that, the fish canneries, the commercial fishing industry, which they depleted the stocks, where it nearly wiped out our salmon. Our herring runs were completely wiped out, and these were pieces of our life and our culture and who we were as a people. Because of their greed and commercialism and capitalism, they brought that industry to a point where it was almost gone. Our herring are slowly returning. Our salmon, the numbers are extremely low just to even sustain us as a people. After that came the logging industry, where they skinned mountains alive, they completely deforested whole areas, completely devastated streams and rivers because of their practices of logging. And we had a connection to the cedar. The cedar was a huge part of who we were as a people. And with that industry completely wiping it out, causing this complete devastation to our ecosystems. And now here we are in the present within this, where it's fish farms. Fish farms that have this species that is foreign to our waters. It's not even from, it's an Atlantic species that's out in our water. These fish are contaminated with antibiotics and pesticides. Everything, they're genetically modified, so everything about them is completely contrary to who we are and as salmon people, and the dangers that it could bring to our wild salmon. Now we're facing mining in our territory. They want a copper mine and they want a gold mine. They want two potential mining activities out in Clydewood Sound. So all of these things over and over, then as well as with colonization, with the Indian Act and the residential school and the reserve system that severed our ties to our land and who we were and how we operated and functioned and how we were in harmony with our land and what was a piece of our governance, was a piece of our culture. They had completely disrupted that relationship through government policies, government laws, litigation, residential school, reserve systems, Indian Act, completely destroying our relationship. Then we have industrialization that is just comes in and does as it please because the government is more than willing to let them in and access our territory. We have all these, be it tourism, like was mentioned before, that we have this huge influx of people that come in that have no knowledge of who we were as human beings. To them, Clydewood Sound is just something for them to come out and profit off without ever acknowledging our jurisdiction upon our territory as Indigenous people. And so here we are as constantly fighting to preserve who we are as Indigenous people, as Kuis people, as our Hahokli, our territory, our interconnectedness with our land. And it's been over and over. Now, here we're in a day and age where it's climate change that we're battling. And through all of these, my people still persevere. We have a really strong and beautiful and proud culture. We're connected to the land. We're connected to our ocean. We still sustain ourselves off the ocean. But it's been constantly a fight and a battle just to have a piece of it, just to make sure it's not completely destroyed, that we're constantly fighting the government, the DFO, we're constantly fighting the invader society, general population. We're constantly battling down. And now we're in a day and age where we're facing the climate issue, where our territories are facing deforestation. Our oceans the acidic levels of the ocean are a huge concern. The warming of the ocean is a huge concern. But then here we are in a place and time where nobody wants to be accountable for that. Governments don't want to be accountable. General society doesn't want to be accountable. Corporations don't want to be accountable because it's always somewhere else. It's always somebody else's who caused it on the other side of the world. It's some other industry. They're not that. So we have these nation states that come together, panels of scientists, environmental NGOs, academics, bureaucrats, who come together to talk about and figure out what the climate issue is, what's going to happen. The problem with this is that their agenda is not to stop or change it, because they don't want to change their world of consumerism. They don't want to change their world of capitalism. They don't want to, general society doesn't want to change living by what they believe what they want, but not what they need as human beings. And that's how general population lives, is their greed and selfishness. And that's a huge part of this equation. So these groups come together and they want to tweak it and change it and create carbon offsetting throughout the world, which is just a huge scam. And that's something that they're trying to bring out to Clydewood Sound. One of the biggest contenders for the carbon offsetting scam is Disneyland, Enbridge, and some of the companies out of the tar sands. They want to purchase parts of Clydewood Sound so that they could continue their devastation elsewhere in their activity. with all of this is, ultimately, it's going to fail if there's not Indigenous people part of these discussions. If we're going to talk about saving the planet and truly and genuinely doing what's right, Indigenous people need to be a part of this discussion. Indigenous people need to be a part of this conversation because it's crucial. Our traditional ecological knowledge is crucial to all of this, of setting things right and being in harmony and living in respect and doing what's right for the planet and doing what's right for humanity. But at the same time, we need to be extremely careful that we're not marginalized as human beings and we're not just used for our knowledge or to be in the background drumming and singing for them, and that we're respected as our identity as Indigenous people, that we're respected for our jurisdiction upon our lives and lands, and that it is our land and it's our territory, and we need, that is a huge piece of correcting everything and setting everything in the right state, because I live within a territory where we're almost like an invisible people, and right next door to us, Tofino, is an extremely wealthy community that's wealthy off of tourism, but as long they could come out in our territory and be it whaling, tourist guides, bring whale watching, kayaking, all these other activities within our territory, but never truly wanting to ever acknowledge that it's our territory, it's our jurisdiction. And when I make statements like that out in my territory in Clydewood Sound, we're racist. They say that we're racist because we're not including Tofino residents, or we're not including BC residents, because it belongs to everybody. Because that's that colonial mentality that it belongs to everybody. You guys can't have it. They don't live in that day and age because of privilege. But the reality is, it is my people's territory. My ancestors' blood is there. We have songs and stories and history that are there. We are tied to the land. We have a connection to the land, and we're still alive, and we're not going away. And not only is it that we need to stop all these industries, be it fracking, be it pipelines, be it mining, be it logging or fish farms, we have to stop the system that's behind it, that's allowing it to happen. We have to stop the mentality that's behind it that allows general population to think that this is normal, that this is how it's supposed to be. We have to completely dismantle that machine. We have to smash the state. At the same time, we need to ensure that Indigenous people's identity remains intact, and Indigenous people's jurisdiction upon their lives and lands remains absolute, that they are in full jurisdiction upon their life and land without compromise. Cluck out.